Fine. Hello. How are you? Do we know the name of the president of the CDB? Oh, okay, good. Are you a good student? Welcome.
Yeah, please. Okay. Yes. Yeah, yes. Thank you. Well, good morning to all. Thanks to the media for your usual dedication to the task of responding to our request to engage you. Engage the public through you. You see how important you are? You have to go through you to get to the people. But we have with us here Dr. Smith, who is the president of the Caribbean Development Bank, and members of his delegation who are visiting with us. The CDB is Dominica's premier development partner. We have a very long-standing relationship with the CDB, and CDB has its footprints in every sphere of our country. If you talk about agriculture, you talk about tourism, you talk about human resource development, infrastructure, health, community development, the CDB is present. CDB was also very, very helpful during our most difficult period between 2002 and 2006, when Dominica had a program with the IMF, a structural adjustment program with the IMF. The CDB provided great guidance to us because they were on our side as partners, because we are shareholders of the bank as a country. But the CDB went beyond its call of duty, its mandate, in great regard to assisting us. While they could not have restructured the loans for us because of the arrangements which they have with the non-borrowing members, the countries which provide and institutions which provide funding to the CDB to lend to us, they were able to come up with a package of assistance that surpassed the restructured loans if they were to restructure us first. And to tell you how practical the CDB was at the time, the then president of the bank and the staff actually came to my home in Vegas to meet with me on a Saturday to discuss the bank's offering for the restructuring request which we asked for. And the number of interventions which the CDB is engaged in Dominica, we have a look with them with regards to the A1 water system. They have provided us with numerous sources of financing over the years to improve the water system for the Roseau catchment area. And that has helped in a very dramatic way because, as you know, the water supply for Roseau was very limited. And with CDB funding, we were able to build large storage facilities up on Mount Bruce to provide for the cruise ship. And when you're providing for the cruise ships, you won't have an interruption with domestic and commercial consumers resident in the Roseau catchment area. Improve the filtration system. So in the event of a disaster, in the event of siltation taking place upstream, it would not have the adverse impact which it had before on the water system. And we have an additional amount, and the project is ongoing now to further improve the water system. So we are building resilience. We in partnership with the CDB in respect to our water supply in Roseau, and not only in Roseau but in several parts of the country, because under the BNTF in particular, the CDB is funded and has funded and is currently funded a number of interventions in improving the water systems in many communities across Dominica. In terms of resource centers on the BNTF, in terms of improvement to school plans, and not only government-owned school plans, this is extended to all schools, and we've done Wesley High School, we've done work with the community high school, and a number of other private, semi-private schools across the country. Early childhood education, assisting in improving and making a lot more of the early childhood institutions in the rural communities compliant with the regulations. The CDB has been very helpful in this. Something which Dominicans do not know, because we have not really made the connection, in respect to the achievement of universal secondary education. It is in large measure a partnership that was with the CDB, where they provided some monies to improve on teacher training, improve on capacity building within the education system, to assist with the implementation of USC, but also post the achievement of USC, to ensure that we had the human resources to address some of the issues which we would have identified. They continue to provide us with a number of technical assistance in a number of areas. CDB was literally the first on the scene after Tropical Storm Erica. Senior bank officials came in and to engage us in discussions. How could they assist? And they have provided us with both technical assistance with grants, and also offered us a significant amount of funds by way of a concessionary loan to assist with the response to Erica. We have just approved some projects under the CDB, additional projects, very soon we should commence work on those contracts. One was signed in June for about $5.4 million. That is the reinstatement of the east side? The west side of the Hillsborough Bridge. The delay in that is simply that the shingle, the shit piles had to be ordered from out of the region, and that would have taken about 12 weeks. That would take 12 weeks for the shipment to arrive. And once the shipment arrives, then it will take a matter of a couple months to have the shit piles into the sand and work advanced in a dramatic way. The second project that is in the Layu area will be the construction of the Community Resource Center that will also serve as a model hurricane shelter or disaster shelter for the residents of Layu. It will be on higher ground, so that in the event of flooding, the residents of Layu will be safe. We should sign this contract hopefully by next week, God's willing, and we should see work a matter of weeks thereafter. We have gone to tender. If you look at the junction going up at Buffett State going up to Emsal, there has been a drop, and we've had drums there for several years. We have gone to tender. The contractors have visited the site. There's a slight complication in that tender, because not only with the construction of the wall, construction of the wall is no problem, but unimpeded vehicular access to the Roseau Valley, because this is the only motorable access to the Roseau Valley. The other is a road that was constructed back in the days to assist the Defense Force in its other activities back in the days and so on. So it's an abandoned road. So the contractors have to provide a solution to that challenge of vehicular access while the wall is being constructed, because literally 100% of our cruise ship arrivals visit the Roseau Valley, and you can't afford to have it closed, especially during the day, because that would compromise the economic opportunities for hundreds of people in the Roseau Valley, and of course the whole country, because all the tour guides, the bus drivers, the vendors will be affected. So we don't want that to happen. So I think once we receive that submission by the contractors, of course it will be assessed, and we'll make a determination based on the technical submissions, which is the best option towards addressing that. So once that is done, we can move with the commencement of this very important retaining wall to improve the safety of the residents. And of course, up in the Loda area, that is also being financed by the CDB. That is slope stabilization and major retaining wall. Though we did that road, as you know, the Rosa Valley is a very vulnerable area, you know. So we had improved that road, because we all recall how narrow the roads are to Loda. So significant work was done in improving access to Loda, but there were some edge failures. That's a clay soil, very porous, no rocks. So it is just there for the taking of erosion and water and so forth. So we've started this. This is in excess of $2.6 million, and that is financed by the CDB. So the number of interventions, you know, the CDB have, as you know, I have had my own views about our friends, the protracted delay in the projects and so forth. I think in my discussion with the President today, I think we can find some solutions to this, and we will continue discussions with them towards addressing this. And I think once we can address this issue of the undue delay in some circumstances with these projects, I think the people of Dominica can see even increased benefits from this relationship with the CDB and Dominica. I said CDB is our preferred source of financing, and we would like to continue that, but we have to address the issue of the efficiency and the effectiveness of the implementation. And finally, the CDB has been the main, in recent time the government's treasury has replaced them, but the main provider of funds to the aid bank. And over time we have seen a reduction in the interest rates from the CDB to the aid bank, which means a reduction in the rates to our local investors. And one of the most successful portfolios at the aid bank in respect to loans from the CDB has to do with the human resource loans, the student loans, or what we call the student loans. Very successful. The large majority of borrowers are keeping to the word and they're paying back. And I know the bank is in discussions with the CDB to see if a further reduction of the interest rates can be achieved, so that reduction can be passed on to all of us who are seeking to improve ourselves and to make life better for our families. We have approved a loan, and I think the CDB has also approved an additional loan to the aid bank, and that will be also for the productive areas in the economy. So the relationship is continuing, and of course the CDB was very helpful in the restructuring of the aid bank. As I've said to the country, there was a temporary severing of relationship between the aid bank and the CDB. It had to do largely with the aid bank's governance practices, because you see, when we're dealing with institutions, we have to maintain very strong good governance practices, accountability, transparency, non-interference of the political directorate in the lending policies of the bank. Unfortunately, we had a situation of those in the past. The CDB has come in, along with the IMF, and they did a study for us, and we've addressed the CDB's concerns. And since then, the CDB has been very, very, very instrumental in accessing financing for us and so forth. So with these few words, just to let you know that we appreciate the visit of the President. His visit here should be seen by the people of Dominica as the level of seriousness which he himself, not only his staff, but the highest authority administratively of the bank, the President, is taking the relationship with Dominica and seeking to hear for himself the issues, see for himself the issues, and then put some solutions in place to those issues. If you were to ask me if I'm very satisfied with his visit, I can tell you I'm extremely satisfied with his visit and the discussions which we had, which were very frank and open and transparent. And for us, it's not about this CDB and Dominica. It is about a partnership. It is about a long-standing relationship. And I do not see us leaving the CDB, neither do I see this CDB leaving us. So we are joined at the hip, and and there's no way we can part ways. But I am very pleased with the presence of the president and the staff and senior staff, and we look forward to an improved. Not only we have good relations, it's an improved administrative relationship and so on. So I should maybe qualify it in that way, for want of a better phrase. So with these few, I would like to invite Dr. Warren Smith, who is the president of the CDB. Dr. Warren Smith is somebody who believes in the Caribbean. He's remained here in the Caribbean to assist us in our development. He is somebody who we consult at the Caribbean level, not only on banking or CDB issues, but a number of other issues. And I think we should be very grateful for people like Dr. Warren Smith for remaining in the Caribbean and willing to work with us in advancing our development. I recall, Dr. Smith was very, very instrumental in assisting us in saving Liat. And I think when we look at it, the history record him as having taken an extraordinary decision. It wasn't a straightforward decision. But without his personal intervention and his personal guidance and the personal leadership which he provided at the time to allow us to access this loan from the CDB, Liat would have come to a grinding halt. And if Liat comes to a grinding halt, what would it have meant to all of us in the Caribbean? For any one of us to get from Dominica to Barbados, we must get Liat. If we get to Antigua, 20 minutes away, we have to catch a Liat flight. And Liat now is very helpful in evacuating our citizens from the BVI and Anguilla and also St. Martin, which we'll be contracting them to do for us. And in disaster time, Liat is at the forefront. So while we have issues with Liat, we cannot, throw it in the Atlantic Ocean. We have to criticize it yet, but criticize it to make it better and to allow it to improve on the services to its clients, so who is the traveling public in the Caribbean. But I want to make this point to let you know that he was very, very helpful in engineering this loan, because it was not a straightforward loan. It was a loan that took extraordinary guidance and effort and a passion for the Caribbean and understanding. He himself understanding aviation, he is understanding the importance of transportation in the Caribbean. And of course, we will certainly be looking to him for further guidance on how we can put Liat on a sustainable path, because we really need to find a sustainable path for Liat, because it is too important for us not to ensure its continued presence and hopefully its success in making a profit, so that the shareholders can one day get something from its investments. But with these few words, I would like to invite Dr. Smith to address us, please. Dr. Smith.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister, Ministers of Government, senior officials of the government, ladies and gentlemen of the media. Thank you very much, Prime Minister, for your very kind words. You're overly generous in your praise of not only myself, but the institution I have the honor of representing. But I think that you are right when you say that CDB and Dominica are joined at the hip. As I mentioned to you this morning when you're dressing us down as we appropriately deserve to be, I mentioned to you that we are going nowhere, and neither are you. So whatever issues we have as partners, we need to sit down and resolve them as adults and as mature human beings. And that's why we are here today. Thank you for having us. I know you're a very busy Prime Minister and that you have other matters of state to deal with, but we felt that it was important that we come here not only to let you know that we have Dominica's interests at heart, but we want to be a better partner than we have been in the past. And I think that what we heard from you today, sir, was not only frank, but it was instructive. And I can assure you and the other members of your government and the people of Dominica that we recognize that we need to step up our game. I mentioned, ladies and gentlemen, in our discussions this morning that one of the biggest challenges that we face in this region, and when I say we, I mean the royal we, that is not only the Caribbean Development Bank, but other development institutions and the governments themselves, is the challenge of implementation. To be able to be effective, to be able to provide projects that impact people's lives, which is what development is all about. We have to have the resources, not only the financial resources, but the human resources to give effect to those projects. More and more today in the development business, it's all about being able to demonstrate results. There was a time in our business we talked about results more in terms of how much money was disbursed, how many approvals we did this year. Well, it's a little bit more complicated today. We have to be able to satisfy our shareholders that we have changed people's lives. And by that, I mean we have to be able to indicate how much we have improved the education system, as the Prime Minister spoke about, how much impact we have had in other areas of life. So that's what development is about. And the implementation is where the rubber really hits the road. So that much of the discussion this morning was about what the Prime Minister identified as implementation gaps, implementation weaknesses, and we're going to address them, but we can't address them on our own. We have to address them by working closely with the government and people of Dominica. But no excuses, that's our job. And I'm here to let you know that we're going to get it done. I don't want to go on forever, but I just wanted to say that Dominica is very special to us in the CDB. And it's also very special to me. I came first to Dominica in 1968. I think that's perhaps before the Prime Minister was born, and certainly his Minister of Works. But I came here in 1968, and this country just blew me away. I was 16 years old at the time, and I had never encountered anything quite as enthralling as this beautiful island of Dominica. And when I had the opportunity to work at the Caribbean Development Bank for the first time in 1985, one of the projects that I had the pleasure of working on was the hydropower plant that now is a major part of your baseload generation. That's renewable energy, but it was renewable energy when renewable energy was not so much heralded. Today, CDB is in the business of renewable energy in a big way. And Dominica is leading the way in that regard because you're probably going to be the first out the gate on geothermal energy. I have told the Prime Minister that I want a piece of that action. He hasn't taken me on yet, but one of the things he doesn't know about me is that I don't give up. So I have told my staff that we are going to be at the table when that geothermal financing is in place. So I'm going to hold you to that one, Prime Minister. But in closing, let me just say thank you for being here. We feel very special. Prime Minister called and asked us at the last minute if we would like to meet the press, and I told him absolutely, because we recognize that we're not only accountable to the government of Dominica, we are accountable to the people. And you, ladies and gentlemen of the media, you represent the people. You are the people's protection. So I'm here, and Prime Minister, thank you very much for having us.
I suspect most of the questions will go to you, if not all. So just stand by your side.
By the way, I'm impressed with this teleprompter, PM. I thought I was the only Caribbean official who had access to a teleprompter, but this is impressive. In fact, it looks better than mine.
It's you're Charlie Jong. Charlie Jong is highly responsible for this.
Okay, yes, it's. I know your speeches were always good, even before you got the teleprompter, PM. But I'm sure they've improved.
Yes, Curtis, please.
Yes. Good morning.
Morning.
Dr. Smith and Prime Minister Skerrit. Dr. Smith, you mentioned one of the concerns you all have has to do with implementation of projects. But are there other concerns that the CDB would have really other Caribbean islands in terms of funding, in terms of projects? What other issues that you all have with the other islands?
The issues are very similar, unfortunately for us, because all of our countries are small. All of our countries, with few exceptions, are very vulnerable not only to external economic shocks, but also to natural hazards. So, you think that you have addressed a particular problem only to find that it has been undermined by, some development in our external environment. Either it is terrorism in some part of the world which affects tourism, and then that affects the fiscal and debt situation of the countries, so that you make progress in that area and then you have to start all over again. Then there are the issues that you face here in Dominica in relation to your infrastructure. You have a beautiful country, but as the Prime Minister mentioned, when you have heavy rainfall, when you have hurricanes and so on, it leads to landslides, which damages your road infrastructure, so it has to be rebuilt. Then you're now in a situation where, because of climate change, you have to rebuild in a more resilient manner. Those problems are very, very acute here in Dominica because of your endowment of a beautiful country with lots of beautiful hills, but there's a downside to it. In other countries, they have other types of problems. Some of them are very low-lying, and therefore they have a lot of issues with erosion of their coastline. Those issues need to be addressed, because the way in which tourism is marketed in the Caribbean today, it still is very much about sun, sea, and sand. So that infrastructure, that natural infrastructure, has to be maintained. And sometimes the resources just are not there. And when I'm talking about the resources, I'm not just talking about the financial, I'm talking about the human capacity to be able to implement the solutions that come along with the money. So the CDB is not like your normal commercial bank. Commercial bank, as long as you have the ability to repay, or they think you have the ability to repay, they give you the money. We don't have that luxury. We have to stay with the project. We have to ensure that it gets implemented, and so that we own it in very much the same way that the governments own it for a significant period of time. So that's the general challenge we face in the development business here in the Caribbean.
The Prime Minister of Dominica is not the only Prime Minister who has commented about the delays they face with the CDB in terms of, drawdown and so on. That is something I think you have discussed. What measures can you all have decided to put in place to ensure that that probably does not happen in the future?
I'm glad you raised that question, sir. It's one we've been struggling with. One of the things that we have come up with is a new mechanism for advance payment. In other words, depending on your circumstances, the CDB is prepared to provide funding upfront in order as a disbursement prior to the work actually being done, right? Now, that is good for us because it gets the money out the door, but it's also good for you because, you're put in a position where you can get started earlier. So it's early days. It's something that the other multilateral institutions have done, but we as a small institution have been much more cautious in that respect, in part also because of the vulnerabilities of our own countries, and especially with them being small economies. But we recognize that it is something that has to be done. So what it does is it creates a little bit more risk for us, but we feel that it's a risk that's well worth taking. And as I say, it's early days yet, but we are hopeful that it will work, and we're going to be monitoring it very carefully. What it means is that we have also had to beef up our internal audit function, because in effect what we have to do is after the fact we'll have to go in and ensure that the resources have been used in the way in which they were supposed to have been used. So therein lies the risk, but the reward will also come from us being able to move the projects forward more rapidly.
Dr. Smith, I'll ask you a final question before my good friend Kewana Fontaine comes in. And it has to do with the Citizenship by Investment program.
Yes.
A major talking point around the Caribbean.
Yes.
From where you sit at the CDB, what are your own views, the bank's views on the Citizenship by Investment program?
Well, I have been quoted on this matter before, sir, and I think my position remains the same. Citizenship by investment is a legitimate form of raising revenue for countries. Some of the most respectable countries in the world, the United States, Canada, you name it, the United Kingdom, have citizenship by investment programs in one shape or form. There's nothing wrong with it. What I have indicated in the past is that for small countries, there's more risk involved because the world we live in today is one with criminal elements operating through the financial systems and that we have and so on. So that the due diligence that is required in protecting yourself is, for me, where the challenge is. I don't think it's an insurmountable problem, but it is one that if it is not addressed, it could have very, very negative blowback on the countries that are doing citizenship by investment. I think if you look at St. Kitts and Nevis, if you look at Antigua, right here in Dominica, you'll see that the citizenship by investment program can generate a lot of cash. And we're not, even though it perhaps displaces some of the opportunity that we might have, Prime Minister, if you grow faster and you grow bigger, I'm sure it is going to create some more work for us. So we're not short-sighted in these matters. So we're happy for the countries that are having some success in the Citizenship by Investment program. But we just urge caution. Make sure that you exercise the right due diligence so that it doesn't have the negative blowback that we have seen in some instances.
Good morning, Dr. Smith. Good morning,
Yes.
Prime Minister Skerrit. A few of your member states were severely affected by Hurricane Irma. Can you speak to your bank's plans on assisting these countries, and especially as it relates to knowing that these countries may not be able to maybe presently repay their loans and so on? Can you speak to that first, please?
All right, let me speak to what we are doing first before I address the second point you raised. The CDB has a strategy and operational guidelines. We refer to it as DIMSOG. And DIMSOG outlines the framework within which we respond to the needs of our countries in situations of disaster. So that what is happening today is not, first of all, it doesn't catch us off guard, because it's something that we recognize that if we don't have to address one country's problem this year, we'll have to address another next year, because that's the nature of the region we live in. So we have a raft of different interventional mechanisms. One is a small grant of about, was it $200,000 US dollars, which we provide immediately to the countries that have been affected. And that money is used essentially to carry out cleaning and clearing, mobilization of resources in the country. Then we have a $750,000 US dollar soft loan, which we provide. Again, that is to sort of get the process going in relation to cleaning up the environment. But then we also have what we call reconstruction loans. And these reconstruction loans are really designed to replace the infrastructure. But in today's world of climate change, we don't just replace the infrastructure in the same way that it was before. We recognize that we have to replace it in a more resilient manner. So we have those sort of three products that we deploy in response to a natural disaster. And we have already sent out letters to all of the countries that have been adversely impacted that are members of CDB. And the other point that I would make is that this time around we have recognized that we need more resources. So we have been reaching out to some of our partners. I speak here about the United Kingdom, because a number of the UK overseas territories have been directly impacted and very adversely impacted by Hurricane Irma. So we have approached the UK for providing us with more resources, and we're in discussions with them. It probably won't come in the form of resources, but it will come in the form of other mechanisms, which I don't want to go into at this particular point. But we have also spoke to the Canadians, who themselves are interested in helping. There's another financial institution that I won't name now, who we have a long-standing relationship with, and they have agreed to provide us with financing that is very nicely priced, meaning low interest rate. It has a good subsidy element in it, which we'll be using for rehabilitation and reconstruction, right? So that's in a nutshell. Let me also speak about the Caribbean Catastrophe Risk Insurance Facility, which I think Dominica continues to purchase insurance from, and that's very wise. That's an institution that we helped to spawn. CDB provided $5 million US dollars in the capitalization of that institution, and we have two directors on the board. So we serve not only as a financier, but also as part of the governance arrangements. That insurance is very, very critical. It represents the bridge between initial financing and reconstruction financing. You might remember in the case of Grenada, after Ivan, Grenada was literally devastated, and the government had difficulties functioning because they weren't generating the revenues because of the state of the economy. Had that insurance facility been in place at that time, the Grenadian government, had they subscribed to the fund, to the facility, they would have had bridging resources to be able to carry on government activity until the economic sectors could be restored. So there's a suite of response mechanisms that are out there for dealing with natural disasters, and CDB is associated with each and every one of them in one shape or form. Okay?
Okay, so from the discussion that the Prime Minister said that you all had this morning, what are some of the key takeaways that you all plan on addressing?
Well, the key one is that if I don't get my act together, I won't be around for very long. That was the key one. But no, I think we're on the same wavelength. The Prime Minister and the country of Dominica, they are our client. If the client is not happy, we have a responsibility to address whatever unhappiness there might be. I don't think that the issues that the Prime Minister raised are insurmountable issues, but they need to be addressed. So the reason we are here is to hear it from the horse's mouth, so to speak. And we heard it. So that we're going to go back. We have outstanding staff, and two of them are here with me this morning. Our Vice President of Operations, Mrs. Monica Bennett, and Mr. Daniel Best, who is our Director of Projects. I don't think we can find better quality than that pretty much anywhere in the world. They're outstanding professionals. They know the business. And they heard the Prime Minister themselves. I didn't want to come here and hear it myself and then relate it to them. I wanted them to also hear it. So when we go back, we're going to sit down with our staff and we're going to be very frank and we're going to come up with solutions that we are satisfied will meet the needs of not only the Prime Minister and the Minister of Works, but also the needs of the people of Dominica, who are our ultimate clients.
In terms of assistance with the aid bank, we know that definitely assists our educational sector. Now, any other plans that the bank plans on making to basically implement our human resource, advance our human resource capacity here on the island? Anything that you all have in place to further assist?
I don't know if there are there any education. Yes, that there. Mr. Best is advising me that there is an education project that's under discussion, but I won't provide any further details on that at this stage. But we respond to the needs of Dominica, so that what we usually do is we work through what is called a country strategy document. And that country strategy document, we renew it every 3 to 4 years, and that comes about as a result of a dialogue between the country and the bank. And it's what the projects that are identified in that document are reflective of the priorities of the government. So anything that we do going forward will be reflected in the country strategy document for Dominica.
As you say, we have we contracted a $15 million loan from the CDB. To focus largely on technical vocational training in Dominica. And that involved the training of trainers, so to speak. So we sent a number of teachers to, particularly the University of West Indies, to pursue both undergraduate and postgraduate studies in various disciplines, in music and others. And they're now back into the school system. But we also provide training for managers within the Ministry of Education with various competencies to deal with the pedagogical issues at the schools and also students' welfare and well-being. So the number of areas there, with regards to ICT within the school system, the CDB was helpful with this loan arrangement. And I must say to you that we're seeing the benefits and of that intervention with regards to the loan from the CDB within the Ministry of Education. Very helpful. I have personally met teachers who have been on this program, and they all have indicated their satisfaction with the training they've received and also the enthusiasm in the classroom and that of the students. And part of that program also, we saw the training of a limited number of principals, especially at the primary school level. And a small component of it involved improving on some identified schools in terms of the physical structure. Okay, thank you very much, as always, and thanks for your questions. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Sure.